Thanks for the many words of my intro. While everybody else is actually still here, if you want to stick around, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is global and kind of philosophical about worship. I'm going to make a little bit of noise, and I'm going to talk a little bit about guitar tonight, but this is mainly going to be a setup and an intro to a series of masterclasses that we would like to do through CCB, through worship. We want to get pretty detailed with it. So if you want to stick around, I don't think you'd be bored, but if you have to leave, then don't tell you how to live your life. So I'm going to put my water somewhere not on that. Cool. So a little bit about me. I'm 28. I live in Burbank. I'm married, and I have a kid and 2 dogs. They're quieter than my kid. And my wife and I got married at the end of 2013. At the beginning of 2014, we moved to Los Angeles. I've been a session and touring guitar player and music director for close to a decade now. I've spent anywhere from 150 to 300 days a year on the road. And in the studio, I have slept most nights away from my bed, which is not fun, but it's a job, and it's what I love to do. I'm super passionate about music, and I'm really passionate about worship. So I'm going to tighten that so that doesn't happen again. Yeah, so I'm really excited to continue on talking what some of the other guys have talked about this evening about an environment of worship and kind of what we do and kind of why we do it. Why us? Why do we get to do this? I believe it's really important to start on a very basic level and branch out from there and talk about why do we get to do what we do, and why were we picked, and why were we given this talent, and why do we have this opportunity to serve and to do the things in the capacity that we do them. I believe that God is very intentional about placing certain people in certain ministries to do certain things, and I've had a lot of conversations with a lot of the guys here about CCB is one ministry that has a lot of different areas to it to reach a lot of different people. And you know, you have people that serve communion, that help with parking, that greet, that help with baptisms, that do graphics, they clean the floors, they cook food, they do everything. And each one of those teams has someone at the top of that team from CCB that says, we love you, we care about you, we care about this position, we care about this church, and we want to help curate this and do it on a better level. And our goal is to bring that to the worship team and to continue to pour and continue to curate that experience to you guys, and to continue to pour in on a deep level of what we do on our instruments, what we do with our voices, and what we do on stage. So I think it's important to understand that you can't reach the big C church until you start with the little C church, and you can't reach those people until you start with yourself and recognize what God has done for you and what God's doing for you. And so this is all relevant to what I do when I pick up that old piece of crap wood and I play through these tiny computers into that big box. And it's all tied together, it's all relevant, and this is what I think of every time I get to serve on a team, every time I get to worship. And you know, I think about the Big C Church a lot, and a lot of us are part of this group, and a lot of believers in this nation and in this city. They can't be impacted until we start reaching people in our home church. And at CCB, we have an incredible opportunity to do that. We have an incredible worship ministry here that I've been blessed to become a part of, and I've gotten worked in over the past few months, and it's been really amazing. And so a lot of what I do on stage with worship is just thinking about that and constantly having that in the back of my mind, and that filters down and it impacts how I play and how I think about my tone and how I think about what guitars I'm going to bring, what gear I'm going to put on stage, and all of those nerdy details matter because they come from this global perspective about what we do for worship. And it's not exclusive to guitar, it's exclusive to, or it's inclusive of everything that we do, from everyone on stage. And so it starts with you, and it starts in your heart, and then it reaches out and it goes through your extremities to your limbs, to your instrument, through your mouth and through your voice. And I think it's really important to work on why you think about why you do worship, and why you are called to do worship, and why you feel like it's necessary for you to walk onto that stage. It's not something that I take lightly, and I have very extreme standards that I hold for people that are members of my team that I've music directed in the past. I believe that CCV has standards for people that they hold who walk onto that stage. I know that this church does not take that lightly, and I would challenge you to not take that lightly either. It's not a game. You know, it's not something that you do because you like it, because it's fun. It's something you do because you have a gift, you have something that God gave you, and you have a borderline obligation. You have a responsibility to be able to go onto that stage. In my opinion, this is how I view it. I view that you have a legitimate responsibility to share your worth and your talent and your gift with your church, because that's going to be contagious. Because the moment you don't do that, you remove the opportunity from someone else seeing that and someone else feeling like they can do that too. And so I think it's really, really important to understand the mentality and the heart of worship first, before we start talking about instruments and gear and playing and tone and everything like that, because none of that matters until you have step one down. That's it. And so you will never, ever reach the church until you start focusing on what God is doing for you first. And so, having said that, we're going to talk a little bit about what we do on stage, and a little bit about gear and appropriateness. And most of what I do and most of what I think about while I'm on stage is thinking about what kind of space I can occupy, what kind of a support role I can step into. And this particular segment is not exclusive to guitar. I think this applies to everyone. You can't support the other people on stage around you unless you're listening. And that's not the same as hearing and being aware of what's going on around you. I mean actually listening to what's going on and listening to the space that's being created around you. And you guys hear a lot, and we say a lot at CCV, keep the main thing the main thing. And that's true in worship too, because what's the main thing in worship in our culture? It's the message of what we're doing. And on a technical level, it's the vocal. Lead singer, it's on stage, they're in front of you, they're the worship leader. From a musical and from a technical level, they are the point. They're the person on stage that you're supposed to support. They're the person on stage you're supposed to create space for. You're supposed to make be heard and to feel right, so that everyone is out there can feel the environment that we're creating, and they can hear the words and and I think that's the point. And so I view being on a team and being part of a worship team as being someone who is playing a support role. So I play a support role: drums, keys, bass, other guitars, other vocalists. We all play a support role to what's actually going on in the center of the stage, because that person on any given Sunday is going to be the most effective person to be able to reach people that come to the worship service, because they're singing, they're leading, they have the mic. So me as an instrumentalist, we're talking about the technical side of things. This is our behind closed doors conversation as part of a team. And so your job is to support that person. I genuinely believe that you need to start thinking about, if you don't already, and if you do, I would challenge you to continue to dive deeper into thinking about what does it mean to support the person on stage next to you and the person on stage in front of you. And so I think it starts with tone. I put a lot of time, I put a lot of effort into my tone, into my gear, and I don't buy things flippantly just to have them. I buy them because they serve a purpose and because they do a thing and they help me do my job well. I would say that for any instrumentalist on the stage. Vocalists, maybe you like Smartwater or Dasani better, I don't know. But I think it starts with tone, and we're going to start to segue a little bit into the guitar specific side of it here. But it's a lot of how I think about what I do as a guitar player is still philosophical. So if you can read between the lines and apply it to what you do, please do. If not, I'm sorry, I probably didn't do a good job explaining it. But I think tone's really important. I think that tone is important because it's one variable that you can control that will help remove distractions. Because if you're not sitting tonally in a space where you can be appropriate and support other people on stage, You're either doing that or you're not doing that. If you're not doing that, you're a distraction. And if you're a distraction, you're removing the opportunity for someone to focus on why they came and why they need to be there. And that's why I put a lot of effort into the gear that I bring and the gear that I have. Notice I'm not saying expensive gear, I'm not saying nice gear, I'm saying put effort into what you have and know how to use that well. Spend time with it, spend time on your instrument. I think you need to spend time with your gear. I spend time with my stuff every day, and I'm used to it. I know it like the back of my hand. If Jeremiah turns around and says, I need you to do this, instantly I can do it. Greg is very used to me now going, we'll run through a song and I'll play a part and I'll turn around and I say, that didn't work. I know it's the hook. I'm not going to play that because it doesn't feel right for what we're doing on stage. And he'll go, yeah, man, that's great. And so I'll step into even more of a support role than what I'm doing, and often I'll simplify what I'm doing even more so that the space that we're creating as a band becomes more and more of a cohesive unit and a cohesive sound that's being translated. You can't do that if you're just focusing on parts. And so one of the main topics of discussion whenever you talk about what we're talking about is appropriateness and being appropriate on stage. And I'm going to start talking about that by letting you know what I think about before I even get to the church. I get a planning center invite, and I look at the songs, and I look at the set list, and I usually think something like, wow, I can't believe they're going to sing that in that key, but let's do it. I'm impressed. I'm not like judging, like I'm impressed. And so, but I listen through songs, and I listen to what's going on in the track, and I listen to what the guitar player's doing, and my first thing that I want to make sure that I know how to do is I listen to the hooks, I listen to the parts, I listen to the main things that were intentionally put there by the songwriter or the producer or the arranger to be an instrumental hook, and I learn those, and then I file them away, and I forget about it. I learn the form of the song, I learn the hooks of the song, and then I'm done. I show up and I walk on stage, and I have those in the back of my head that I can recall if I need to, but I don't jump out to a hook until I know I'm supported playing it as a guitar player. A lot of the time CCV has one guitar player on stage, and I think it's really important to understand that you're not always going to get to play lead parts whenever you're the only guitar player on stage, because most of the time those parts were designed to be supported in a very specific way by another guitar player, and what you're doing from a rhythm perspective is crucial to the feel of that song. And the moment you step away from that and step into a lead role without somebody shifting something to help support that, you're kind of taking a lot of the legs away of what's going on, because guitars are incredibly mid-rangey and they do a lot for the support and for the energy of a song. And so it's difficult to maintain that support and that feel on stage for everyone if you're the only guitar player and you're jumping out to leads and you guys didn't have a conversation beforehand about what's going to happen underneath that. Keys can do a great job of filling that space, but they have to know what's going on, and you can't just default to playing parts on the record because you're not in that band. You didn't record that part, you're not at that church, and you're not on that stage with all 19 of those other people that were there. You're on this stage, and there's this many people here, and this is what they're doing. And so you need to start there. So that's why I memorize the parts, I memorize the form, but then I show up and I kind of file that back and I wait until I need to use it. And a lot of the times I don't. A lot of the times I stick to the form of the song, I listen to my music director, I listen to my worship leader, and I go, what do I need to do here to make this song feel good? And a lot of that has to do with trust, and trusting people on stage around you. I think it's really, really important to listen. I said at the beginning, I'm going to say it a million more times, you can't do any of the things that I just talked about if you're not listening. I am going to challenge the guitar players at CCV to shy away from defaulting to the parts that are on the record during run-through, and try and play something that you feel is supportive in the moment. Because if it doesn't work, someone's gonna say, hey, can you try something different? Problem solved, it's not a big deal. But I'm speaking pretty specifically about this worship team here, and it's something that I notice a lot with myself. I commit a lot to parts, and they just don't always work on stage when you're the only guitar player. This is a guitar class, and they just don't always work, and it's hard. So I would challenge you to, if you play guitar here or anywhere else and you're the only guitar player on stage, to try really hard to not default to the parts that are on the record, because those parts that are on the record were put there specifically and intentionally, and there's a million other things going on underneath them that might not be going on live here. They might be, but listen. Listen to what's going on. So that's my challenge to guitar players at CCV, whether there are 1 or 10 of you on stage. Listen to what's going on. Make sure that you know the parts if you need them, but understand that there's a good chance you might not get to play that really cool hook really high up on the neck that pokes out in the mix, because you're now taking away the opportunity to support everyone else on stage. It's really important to me. And so that doesn't mean just play rhythm the whole time. It just means listen and do your job. So I'm really into doing your job. Okay, so I'm gonna make a little bit of noise and go through a few examples. I'm not gonna take up too much more of everyone's time. However, this is a guitar class, and Greg helped me carry this stuff in, so I'd be remiss if I didn't at least make some noise.
Good midnight.
So, thanks. I'm just gonna, because this is an introductory masterclass to what we want to do, I'm not gonna get really detail oriented with my setup, because not you and not you are gonna be fine. The rest of you are gonna get bored really fast. And so I'm gonna keep it pretty global, and I'm gonna kind of go through just big picture stuff about my rig and kind of what I do. And then
play a solo.
I'm gonna play a solo. And then, you know, when people watch this recording back, this will be something that you can reference. It's just gonna be a big picture of kind of what I do. This is still kind of looped into the getting to know me part of this, but in the future, you know, I've talked to Ben and Greg a lot about this, and I really want to do really detail-oriented master classes and do a very detail-oriented video series so that we can start creating a pool of content that people can reference and go, I want to learn more about gain staging, I want to learn more about reverb, I want to learn more about time-based effects, about signal chain, about signal flow, I want to learn more about guitar pickups, guitar setups and playing, I want to learn more about amps and feel. These are all big topics that we're going to discuss and we're going to talk about in the future, whether that's at future team nights or whether that's through video content that's curated through Valley Worship. But this is going to be just like a big general overview of my rig, how I think about things. A lot of this is going to be able to translate to a lot of the other rigs and a lot of the guitar players here, because we all have a lot of similar gear. But I'm going to talk about the philosophy of why I think about what I do and like the parts that I have. Okay, that was not as painful as I thought it was going to be. Cool. So, this is an old guitar, and these are some old amps that make noise when I hold them. So, so this is where I'm gonna have to really have a filter and not get way down a rabbit hole. Man, it's a good thing we're doing a lot more classes, because I will talk for hours about all this crap. So again, everything that I said earlier is important, because now we're at the application point. So what I want to talk about here, and the reason why I brought my rig to show to the few guitar players that are here and to the people that are going to be watching this in the future, is to be able to give you a tangible representation of how I apply the things that I think about whenever I think about supporting people in an environment of worship. The reason why I don't make presets and I don't set my board up for the exact sounds and parts that are on the record is because once I do that, committing those to memory. By the way, I want to preface everything with saying that I'm not saying that that's a bad thing. And I'm not saying that if you do that, you're wrong. I'm just saying this is how I think about it, and I've seen a lot of benefit by other people that are around me that I've been able to support by changing my way of thinking over the years. So let me just get that out of the way. I'm not speaking negatively about any opposing concept that I'm discussing. I'm just saying this is how I think about things, and this is something that's important to me, and I've seen a lot of benefits of this on stage, and so it's stuck with me. I think in terms of space, and I think in terms of tone, and so my rig is set up to give me access to different types of space and to different types of tone. And the reason why I don't memorize the exact part or the exact tone that they have on the record is not because I can't, it's because often when I do, that's the only thing that's in my head. And when we hit chorus 1, my brain goes, this is the part, and I play that part. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're on that stage with all those people that made that record. But you're not, and none of us are. And on any given week, there's a different group of people on stage, and there's a different group of instruments on stage. And most of the time, there's not another person on your instrument. So it's really important what you do as a sole proprietor of that area. So the reason why I shy away from that is because the moment I start to commit those parts into my memory, once we get to the chorus, once we get to the bridge, once we get to the outro, verse 2, whatever, I'm automatically thinking about what part comes next and what I need to do next, instead of listening and hearing what's going on around me on stage and going, what needs to happen next? And so memorizing parts is not bad. It's a great starting point. I always start there, but I forget them as soon as I walk on stage, because 9 times out of 10, playing something like doesn't do as much as the hook sounds cool and it feels good, but you're not doing anything rhythmically to support what's going on. So that's why a lot of the times I default to simpler guitar parts, lower on the neck, with more effects to create more of a space. And I don't want to fill the space up, I want to fill my box up. So if you taped off stage around everyone, this is my area, I need to fill my area. Greg needs to fill his area, drums need to fill their area, vocals need to fill their area, bass. Everyone has an area that they need to occupy in the mix. And coming from a front of house perspective, you can't do that if you're not focusing on what everyone else is doing and how you can support them. So a lot of what I talk about is monotonous. It's the same thing over and over again. It's the same thing said in 10 different ways, but I believe in fundamentals and I believe in simplicity, and that's why a lot of the times I'm able to occupy a lot of spaces on stage, and I'm able to help people occupy a lot of spaces on stage because I harp on the same issues over and over again. Just listen, 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 listen. And the reason why this isn't necessarily a guitar masterclass is because I'm talking about the philosophy of what we do here. And again, in the future, we're gonna get really detail oriented, we're gonna get really technical. But tonight, I really did just wanna talk about, listen, why do we do what we do? Why do we feel like we need to be on that stage? And let's talk about the philosophy of worship. And let's talk about a little bit of guitar. So I set my overdrives up just because we're here. And you put guitar on the screen, so I'm going to talk a little bit about guitar. I set my overdrives up to be able to give me access to different gain stages. I have clean. I have a bass clean sound. I have a very light overdrive for a stage 1 gain. Another very light overdrive for gain stage 2 for a little bit more grit. And then I have a higher gain pedal for leads and